Men should not cry. Win or bid?
Win.
Win?
Win.
Why are we saying win? Men shouldn't cry? Why do you say men shouldn't cry, sir?
No one wants to be judged. No one wants to be seen as less than. But the reality is we need to be willing to be vulnerable and show our weakness in order to be able to accept ourselves fully.
I'm not saying you can't be vulnerable. Being on that side too much will get you in more loss.
Yeah.
If our desire is to be intimate with somebody, then we have to be willing to at least show that person that side of ourselves.
Yeah.
Emotions are not bad. Every emotion that we have has a function. It does something for us.
Right.
When I feel fear, it tells me there may be danger. When I feel anxiety, it tells me that I'm living too far in the future and expecting negative results. When I feel sadness, I cry.
This is everyone's world, but this is a man's world. Do you ever wonder what conversations are had in the barbershop? Especially when the cape goes on and the clippers come out, the hot takes. I am giving you the inside scoop. On this episode of After Dark Chat, let's get real with our man. We're on the conversation about openness as well, and I'm thinking about the pressures that men face. There are so many expectations, so many unspoken rules about being a man. And so, do you ever feel pressured really to live up to the expectations of how we act, how we love, how we even perform in the bedroom? Stévia.
Man. Yeah, the pressures are interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I feel like there's this fetishization of trans men.
Okay.
And a lot of times, like I've had experiences of literally just saying hi to somebody and the expectation is that I want to do something, and I'm like, I was literally just telling you that your shoe was untied. I have zero interest in you like this, you know, like I'm happily married. Like I have zero interest. But there's this expectation, and then, you know, you get with the guys and you talk and you laugh, and then whoo there's all these
flashbacks.
There's all these like expectations of how, like, the examples of manhood that you've seen, especially growing up in the Caribbean, like the examples of manhood that you've seen, the player aesthetic, and like a lot of folks who might not have had better examples of what masculinity is, kind of fall into that. And I think there's like an expectation that you fall into that, but thankfully for me, I've had different experiences with masculinity, and I've had experiences that shape how I want to show up as a man. And I'm grateful that I don't often fall through to peer pressure, but there's so much out there. Like you want to show up to be a provider, you want to show up to be, you know, that master in bed. You want to do all the things that often sometimes are so unrealistic, but you don't really have anything outside of the spaces where you learn these things, right? And then everybody's bringing their own experience, and you take from that what you will. So those pressures definitely can tend to exist.
You touched on something very important, and it's really the stereotypes that black men face. Black men face so many stereotypes, especially Jamaican men. And I can say that because I'm Jamaican, right? So Jamaican men are usually known as players, as you rightfully said. You said something about players, right? But also, there's a stereotype that black men as a whole all possess a BBC. Right? And so when it comes to sex, Tony, how do we break down these barriers and these stereotypes as well?
How do we break them down? Well, you know, I think some of that has to do with not being so concerned with what others think. So we are brought up to, as men, to be in control, to be dominant, to not be seen as weak in any way. And unless I'm able to not be concerned what people think when I show my vulnerability, when I show that maybe at times I prefer to be submissive rather than dominant, that I don't always like to be in control.
Yeah.
If I buy into what the culture says, if I buy into what others are saying, then I'm always going to be trying to act like that player. But if I'm able to put aside that, which is really difficult because no one wants to be judged, no one wants to be seen as less than, but the reality is we need to be willing to be vulnerable and show our weakness in order to be able to accept ourselves fully, and not be directed by the stereotypes that have been drawn for us.
Yeah, you said something very critical. You spoke about how we were raised, or how you were raised, for example. And a question came to mind, Derrick. Do you think how we were raised to be a man today, do you think that affects how we are in relationships?
Yeah, I should say, most especially in black men or black families. Just as he said, as a man, you're raised to live up to some kind of a way or some kind of a life, you know? Like, for example, like a man, you can't say probably no, you know? Can't say I can't. You know, you gotta have to be a man who you are raised to be, you know? And then this also does not just stop in our daily life of doing things, you know?
Okay.
It goes to family, sex. You know, you've seen a couple of times, like your partner cannot say something, you know, if he wants it this way, that's it. You know, that dominancy, you know, like I'm the man, what are you telling me?
Mm-hmm.
So that has affected us in different ways, you know. I've seen like men living to please the society, you know, going beyond.
Yeah.
Going above and beyond to prove the society that I can actually do this, I can actually be this, I can actually, you know, be like this. And that does not just stop in a way that we live life, but it literally goes to even like the behavior, the way how we do things, the way how we, you know. And then when you look at, you know, relationships that are abusive, to some point it came from that, you know. Like people are not willing to, you know, come to the same level, to the group, to a round table to talk about things, to discuss and live up to the same page, or work life together, you know.
Yeah.
So,
You know, you said something that made me think of a question, and so this question is really a win or bin. So you'll tell me if it's win or if it's bin. Men should not cry. Win or bin?
Win.
Win?
win.
Why are we saying win? Men shouldn't cry? Why do you say men shouldn't cry? Sorry.
All strength, no weakness. You can.
And I think that's playing into how we were raised to be men, right? So yeah, but explain though.
The world is not really set up to forgive us.
Okay.
You know, there's examples shown of that in society. He's just, for example, like a man that's down bad, homeless, right? You see majority of people who are homeless, they're men, right? Like women, they get more grace. So it's like you gotta, like, I think even when you're raising your son, you gotta actually, you know, make sure that they're aware of that. So, because there's not room for mistakes when it comes to us.
Okay.
You know, especially later on in life. So that's why.
Yeah.
That's why I think, you know, just being strong is it's more necessary than the other. I think showing too much. Right? I'm not saying you can't be vulnerable. Being on that side too much will get you in more loss.
Yeah. You know, when I think about strength, in the traditional sense, it usually has to do with the physical outward appearance, based on what we were taught. But the reality is, physical strength can also be mental. And the truth is, if we're not allowed to cry as men, let's be for real. I think, you know, it plays into how, you know, mentally we are seen in the world. right? And so I feel like I appreciate what you said and I agree, but I also think for me, shedding a tear or two isn't so bad as a man, you know?
No, don't get it twisted. I agree.
Yeah.
But just don't be doing it right in front of people. You gotta after work you go in your car and just let them tears out, bruh.
I don't even know about that. I think I would go further than that. I would say that if our desire is to be intimate with somebody, then we have to be willing to at least show that person that side of ourselves. You know, we're all human beings, and as human beings, we're all susceptible to emotions. Emotions are not bad. Every emotion that we have has a function. It does something for us. When I feel fear, it tells me there may be danger. When I feel anxiety, it tells me that I'm living too far in the future and expecting negative results. When I feel sadness, I cry, and tears are a natural part of, if you cry and there's no tears, there's something wrong with that. So I say if we want to actually build connected relationships, not just with partners, but with family members, with friends, if we want to actually be connected, we have to be willing to engage with our emotions and understand that all our emotions have a function. They do something for us, and ignoring them will leave us in jeopardy to some degree.